Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show. Welcome, everybody, to the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is our podcast specifically for yoga. Not specifically, it's for people who wants that Vedic wisdom in their life on a regular basis. It becomes our little addictive food, and we are here with what's our numbers like today on Zoom?
112 right now.
112 on Zoom. And also we have a big group that listens on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. If you'd like to join our Zoom group, you can email our executive producer, Mara. She's here too. wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And we're just coming down off a very, very high interview day. Saturday and Sunday, we do an interview, or Saturday, question day. If you got questions, you can write into Mara. And interview day, we had Raghunath Swami, and we had like 17,000 Facebook views. It was unbelievable. 500 shares, 450 comments last night. It's unbelievable. How's your feeling from that, Kaustubha?
I'm still riding kind of high, actually.
Yeah. Truthfully, if it was just us, it was just you, me, and Mara, I would be like, that was great. It was really,
Right, yeah.
That's the beauty about this stuff. Whether it's like you're doing it with one person, you have thousands of people. The power of bhakti is so powerful. The power of association with great souls.
You know what? It just always kind of touches me or blows my mind a little bit, is just on a practical level. Just if you look at it, just kind of straight out analyze the situation. He's like way more like qualified than us in every way. So much more accomplished. It's like ridiculous. Like, what he's done and what his learning is way beyond. His accomplishments are way beyond. But when he relates to you, like when I spoke to him after it, I right after the show, I just called him up to thank him and all that. And his attitude, and it wouldn't even be wrong for him to be like, okay, you're welcome, but he was like, did I do okay? I hope I didn't mess it up for you all. It's like, he's so thoughtful like that. And so gracious to even think that like our opinion would be more important than his or something like that. It's actually, it's genuine humility. It's really something special. You're muted, Raghunath. There you go.
There you go. I unmuted myself, but because Mara is the host, I can only unmute myself with her blessings. I'm trying to like bang on the screen. Let me out, Mara. Let me talk. I gotta talk. I got things to say. I'm gonna lose my mind. Again, my wife says if I ever went on one of those Vipassana retreats, my head would explode. Yeah, he is one of those people that's in one sense like incredibly materially qualified, yet completely detached from everything.
Yeah.
Even when I invite him to Super Soul at our farm, we'll give him the nice guest room. He'll set up his stuff right on the floor. He won't sleep on the bed. He just likes to keep it incredibly simple. He's got all these huge projects going on, yet he doesn't get he just gives directions to people. And from his personal integrity of how he lives, people just want to do whatever he says.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get it's an incredible example of being in it, but not of it at all.
Oh, and I wanted to apologize.
Humble like anything.
I wanted to apologize to everyone that had to just wait there for a half hour or whatever it was. And it was mysterious that for some reason he was like, we had him signed in and he was there, but he couldn't hear us and we couldn't hear him. And we tried it several different times. We're doing it different ways. And something inside me was like, we were about to give up, like say, oh, this isn't going to work. And then he said, let's try, because I was speaking to him on the phone. He said, let's try it one more time. And something in me just said, it's going to work. It's just like we're meant to go through this challenge for some reason. And then we have no idea why it worked the last time, but it worked and we got through.
I find Krishna always makes me a little desperate.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was feeling. He's like, we're meant to be feeling desperate right now. And in the end, it's going to work.
Is it going to it's like a transcendental anxiety. Krishna never likes me to feel like I've got my life all figured out. You're one of those persons where you feel like my life is crumbling every day. My life is crumbling. It's Krishna taking special care in you to make you dependent on him. When I think I got it figured out, I'm just cruising around arrogant. But when things are crumbling, that's when you really sort of like reach out. Krishna, please, where are you? I need you right now. It's like that's where yoga happens. That's where that real deep connection happens, in that sort of transcendental destitution.
Anyway, yeah, I'm still flying high and still so grateful to him and grateful to everyone. Actually, it was just, we had like 350 some people, and normally, like when I'm looking at my screen right now, I see there's 5 pages of faces to look at. And at one point during that interview, I just kind of started going through the 14 different screens. There's so many people, and I just felt so touched. Everyone was listening so attentively, and I just really felt blessed to be part of this whole community, and so I thank everyone.
I thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Raghu.
All right.
Ready?
Well, remember, today is Makeover Monday.
Oh yeah.
If you're new to Makeover Monday, the idea is that people make these New Year's resolutions, and they're like, I want to become this. I want to do this with my life. I want to add this to my life, in my spiritual life. I want to study more. I want to chant more. I want to meditate more. I want to do yoga a few days a week, or whatever it is. They make this resolution, and then just due to the nature of life, we quit. And February 17th comes around. Everyone's like, whatever. We say, and then we say, what good are New Year's resolutions? But there is something cool about starting afresh. But we say, do it on Monday. You can reflect on last week, where you were strong, where you were weak, where you failed, where you said, you know what, I wanted to do this and I just didn't do it. Monday's a day where you can sort of pick yourself up and you say, you know what, I'm going to start over. I'm going to start over and just see how I do this week. And if you feel like you need to add something positive to your life, today is the day. Write it down right now during this class. Open a notes thing. This week I'm going to do this. This week I'm going to let go of this. I wasn't the man I wanted to be last week. I dropped the ball on it. This week I'm going to be this. Or I didn't live up to my potential last week. This is what I'm going to add. And explicitly write it down in your notes today. And that's why we call Makeover Monday. And you know what? You just check in every day. And then Monday, you got another Monday to check in with you next week. Welcome to Makeover Monday.
All right.
All right. So let's dive into the Srimad Bhagavatam. We start with these lovely prayers. How do you like the definition of Narayan Rishi?
I think on a certain, it was beautiful. I was loved hearing him talk about him and helped me even picture more in my mind. And I think the 1 and 2 thing is just like, it's something that is a bit mysterious for us,
Would you like to
could manifest as 1, he can manifest as 2.
Yeah. You know what? We also have to accept certain things we're not going to be able to understand.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Someday we'll understand.
We'll understand that we just can't understand everything with our puny little brain. All right. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before you start in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavate uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we're reading from the first canto.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. Where's my... There we go. Chapter 10, text 23. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees, who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of rigid bhakti, or devotional service, and full control of life and the senses. And that is the only way to purify existence.
So saying that certain we're just talking about this, certain things can be understood or perceived with the material senses or through material consciousness, but it's limiting. And there's more that if we controlled our senses and engaged in rigid devotional service, there would be more for us to experience or to understand. And so these ladies, and maybe there should just be a little, as we begin the week, we can just say that what's happening in this chapter was that Krishna's leaving Hastinapur after dealing with a few things there and spending some time with the Pandavas after the war, the Battle of Kurukshetra. Now he's decided to move on. He's going back to Dwarka, where he lives on the west coast. And as he's on that chariot and about to leave, all the ladies from Hastinapur, they're on the roofs looking down. They want a good view.
Krishna's leaving.
He's leaving. And they're full of blended emotions, right? Like thrilled to see him, but also
beautiful. I love him. He's leaving.
That upcoming sense of, it's said that feeling of separation right at the moment when someone is leaving is the most intense, And, but from their mouths are coming, they're expressing their hearts. And they're also, what they're saying, it was said that even though they weren't great learned scholars or anything, but their words were more beautiful than the hymns of the Vedas. And everything that they're saying has deep spiritual understanding in it. So they're saying, here he is, look at him. We're seeing the Supreme Lord himself. And that this form is experienced by the great devotees who don't have any material, their consciousness, their mind has been completely transformed so that their spiritual consciousness has arisen and they perceive this form all the time. Right? They can perceive it all the time. So why don't we read the commentary?
As it's stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord can be known in his real nature by dint of pure bhakti only. So it is stated here that only great devotees of the Lord who are able to clear the mind of material dust. I got a lot of material dust, I think.
Me too.
By rigid devotional service can experience the Lord as he is. Jitendriya means one who has full control over the senses. Yeah, so senses are active parts of the body.
Indriya means the senses, and Jita means to conquer. Right? One who has conquered the senses.
The senses are active parts of the body, and their activities cannot be stopped. The artificial means of yogic processes to make the senses inactive has proved to be abject failure, even in the case of great yogis like Vishvamitra Muni. Vishvamitra Muni
What happened to Vishvamitra Muni? Let's see.
Vishvamitra, this is a good story. And if yogis out there know Vishvamitrasana, it's where you take your leg over your head like that. Named after this great sage, who's one of the teachers of Ram and Lakshman. Vishvamitra Muni controlled his senses by yogic trance, but when he happened to meet Menika, a heavenly society woman, he became a victim to sex, and the artificial way of controlling the senses failed.
The artificial way. It's interesting that he categorizes it that way.
He's basically saying what you would consider a classical way to control your senses. Like, what did he do? Vishvamitra isolated himself. He was a king, and he went to the mountains to isolate himself so he could develop mystic cities so he could defeat Vashista and Vashista was like a renowned sage. So he went and isolated himself, but because his heart wasn't clean, he kept on getting these challenges again and again. So it was Vashista who sent Menika, I think.
I believe was it Indra who's saying, "Oh, he may become too powerful"?
I can't remember.
I don't think Vashishta even cares, right? But I could be wrong.
I think Vashista had a Brahma Dunda that he would zap him with every time he'd attack. He tried to attack Vashista to get that cow.
I know, but if he's not attacking, that's another thing, right? If he's just off doing his yoga.
Okay, that could have been Indra then. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Indra.
He fell victim.
Yeah, but you know what he calls that an artificial way of controlling the senses. Now that's the way a lot of people think of yoga. You isolate yourself, and then through your strong conviction and analysis, or through your through your lifestyle, through your asana, through your pranayama, through your pratyahara, you go through this. And now what Prabhupada is saying, he's calling that artificial, because the way in bhakti yoga that the senses are controlled is that they are naturally, spontaneously drawn to the object of your love. They're drawn to Krishna. So I'm not even artificial. I'm not externally trying to make it control it, but they're going that way naturally. Right. So he's saying here, even someone like, now, if you read about Vishvamitra, his ability to control his senses is like way beyond any of us. It was like, he could do extreme stuff, but even still, because in a sense it's artificial, he could still fall victim.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead, please.
Well, I was thinking like, by good fortune, when I lived in the ashram, in the ashram, we all had to just control our senses. We had to wake up early. As men, we were celibate monks. Hard to do in your 20s. And sometimes that type of like, I'm just going to dive in here and just control the senses. And it was difficult for a lot of people out there. I found like it was very much easier for me, because in my service later, I started doing music as my service in my band. So therefore, my senses were engaged in service. Like, what are my senses? Well, I like to write music. So that got engaged in a spiritual activity. I like to write lyrics. That was engaged. That was a creative desire I had.
You like to jump around on the stage.
I jumped around on the stage. I like to jump around. Can't do that if I'm just a monk. If I'm jumping around a lot, well, I guess you could in the kirtan.
Maybe.
But there's ways that my senses didn't feel like, well, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do that. I'm frustrated. I got to jump the fence. And, we saw a lot of monks just like, I can't do this. It's too much. But because I felt like my senses were actually engaged, my talents were engaged, my thoughts were engaged, my words engaged, I was very happily, as a celibate, brahmachari, waking up early and all those things. So it wasn't artificial. It was fully engaged by Guru's grace. And it kept me stronger on that spiritual path, to just isolate myself and say, no, I'm going to be, and we've seen this too. People are just like, I'm going to like cut myself off from the material world. And it's romantic, but it's for very few people that can pull stuff like that off.
Right.
It's not practical.
For most people, it will not be.
You know what's practical? You're walking to work and you got a bead bag in your hand and you're chanting as you're walking to work. People are saying, hey man, what are you talking about? What are you mumbling about? Oh, nothing, just chanting. Walking around with that bead bag, looking a little weird. No one knows what's going on. Did you break your hand? Ever get people to say that? Did you break your hand?
Well,
yeah, I broke my hand. I'm wearing a purple cast.
I have that winter bead bag that I have. You've seen that one?
Oh yeah, Kaustubha's got this massive. What is that thing? Like
it's kind of like you put your hand in it and it's just kind of square looking. And when I walk around the city with that thing, people think like I've got a gun in that or something. Like,
yeah.
What's he got?
You should have like no guns, / no guns.
This is not a gun. But what I've noticed is now during the lockdown, when I go out and I have that, like anything's normal now. It's like, everybody's got a weird mask on of some sort and everything like that. So it's not getting anyone's attention.
I know everybody looks like they're from the Animal Liberation Front out there. It's like, yeah. It's very practical. I find in bhakti, because you're in it. We're in the material world, but but you've got to, there's principles even within that. Type of sense control, mind control. I love that word. What you need is some good mind control. Okay, so anyway, Vishvamitra didn't do well with that.
Yes.
When the senses are engaged in more attractive activities, right? You don't give up activities. You just do activities that will upgrade you instead of degrading you. We've all done a lot of that, degrading activities. What about that same thing, upgrading me?
Okay.
It really just means shifting it out of my ego. The senses are not at all artificially stopped from doing anything, but they are given different good engagements. When the senses are engaged in more attractive activities, there's no chance of their being attracted by any inferior engagements. In the Gita, it is said that the senses can be controlled only by better engagements.
Okay, hot seat.
Vishaya vinivartante. Is that what you're going for?
That's right. Nira harasya dehina, rasavarjam rasopyasa.
I can't remember the last line.
Param.
First line. Throw
Okay.
me a jalebi. I got the first line. Throw me a jalebi, please.
Param dristva
I'm not going to say
nirvartate.
throw me a bone anymore. I'm going to say throw me a jalebi. If you don't know what a jalebi is, they are these magical foods.
They're great.
I don't even how do they make jalebis, Mary? You're a chef. What do they teach you in chef school? Did you?
They're fried. Isn't it like a fried batter?
Yeah, it's a fermented batter.
Yeah.
That's
and then
you
made a jalebi, Kaustubha.
sorry?
Have you made it? Have you made it?
I don't think I've ever made one. I've seen them made many times. You have this batter, and then you get it in one of those kind of like squeeze things, like they decorate frosting, like decorative frosting they do with.
They throw it right in the ghee. Right in the ghee.
And they make a squiggly little design, like a pretzel kind of thing.
A Mr. Twister pretzel.
Yeah.
Pretzel.
And then I believe it's also after that, it's immersed in syrup after that with saffron in it. Right. And if you have that thing hot, oh man, it's so good. Okay.
Unbelievable. Hot when they come out of that hot, forget it.
So Vishaya Vinivartante, this is 257, no, 259 from the Gita, that though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, but still has a taste for the sense objects. You know, so like Vishvamitra, he's restricting his senses, but his senses still apparently are interested in Menika. But you can cease that kind of lower engagement by getting a higher engagement. So rather than just stop the senses, if they have a positive engagement, that's how you let go of the material engagement, by not shutting off the senses, but by engaging them in some of the spiritual. And that goes back to that analogy that we use where, like, if the spiritual world is like a tree and the material world is like the reflection of the tree that's upside down, the goal isn't to get to that middle point, the neutral stage, which a lot of people think that's yoga, like to give up material activity. That's one thing, but to engage in spiritual activity, that's the true opposite of material activity. It's not no activity, but spiritual activity.
Sure.
And it's a more practical engagement for most of us.
We're giving up, but we're getting back so much greater.
Yeah.
Right. We have
positive engagement.
Yeah. We're giving up some material company and trading it in for spiritual company. We're giving up different types of food that didn't affect our consciousness, trading it in for food that uplifts our consciousness. It's not bad. If I say, hey, give me $20, you're like, oh man, come on. Raghunath's always asking me for $20. But if I say, give me $20 because I'm about to give you a trunk load of gold coins, that's different. You don't mind giving something up to get something so much greater. In Bhakti, there's a little sacrifice, a little ding, so you get something quite fantastic and quite deep, with so much depth, so much value. There's a little sacrifice for so much more of a payoff, just like in any type of return on investment. The return on investment in Bhakti is massive.
Right.
Devotional service necessitates purifying the senses or engaging them in activities of Bhakti. Devotional service is not inaction. Anything done in the service of the Lord becomes at once purified of its material nature. The material conception is due to ignorance only. There is nothing beyond Vasudev. Vasudev Sarvamiti Samaha. No.
Oh, yeah.
Trying. The Vasudev conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after a prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs. Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's a very interesting sentence, isn't it?
Why don't you read that again to me?
Okay, the Vasudeva conception, that means the spiritual conception, the conception that's aligned with and enlivened by the spiritual energy. The Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after a prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs. So I guess by what it means by prolonged acceleration, like a prolonged practice or positive engagement of the senses. By receptive organs, he means the senses. They receive information, right? So if we positively engage our senses in devotional service, engage the ears in, hearing the Shastra, engage the eyes in, seeing the form of the Lord, and, engage the mouth in chanting the names and so on, then by engaging those senses in that prolonged, he calls it an acceleration, that the Vasudeva conception arises.
Everything that we do of the material world that feeds the ego can be spiritualized. We were saying in our Sweet Baby Krishna class last night for the Patreon peeps, we have this thing about, there's some people who are really into aesthetics. They just like to dress up nicely. And it's, in one sense, these Venusian people are like fine things or fine clothes. And it's not like that's a bad thing. But if it fuels your ego, or, if it's all about a check me out, it complicates your life. You get implicated with the ego. Therefore, we were talking about this word darshan, where we generally think it to mean I'm going to see the Lord. They're going to open the curtains at the temple and you see. But it's really, they're opening the curtains and the Lord is seeing you. The Lord is validating you, seeing what you look like today. So we dress up to go to the temple, not to impress other people, but you actually want to dress beautifully so the Lord sees you, checks in with you. And all those same things that we have, some thing that can be usually used that complicates our life with our ego, can be used to purify our life. If you're creative or you're artistic, you can use your art truly just for your ego. And that thing that you love will ruin your life, because as we just invest in the ego as our identity, we create a huge amount of suffering. I could see it in my own life as a musician, but I'm sure you could see it in the workplace or in your own creative endeavors or whatever it be. And so here it is. It's really what we have to trade in is that ego version of myself, or this is an offering. And once it's as this is an offering, it takes that same thing that we're good at, that we're talented at, that we excel in, and makes it very beautiful. And it lifts us up instead of takes us down.
Thank you for that, Raghu.
You're welcome.
This is really interesting, these next couple sentences here.
Why don't you read, please?
He says, so he said that the Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned so the learned, right? The jnani, it's saying, one who knows, one who has knowledge. The Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs. Oh, very interesting. Maybe he's speaking about the Jnana Yogi here, but in my understanding of the prolonged acceleration means like a prolonged control of the senses.
Prolonged acceleration.
And maybe by acceleration he means like the strict control of the senses.
It seems like those two words are opposite: prolonged and acceleration.
I have a feeling what he means in this sentence is he's saying that this spiritual conception will develop in the heart of the Jnana Yogi after a long time of strict control of the senses. I think that's what he's saying. Because, and the reason I think that is because of the following sentences. He says, but the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all, because that's referring to the verse, what is it? Bahunam janmana ante, at the end of many births and deaths. Jnanavan, the learned one, the one who has jnana, mam prapajante, they surrender unto me, Vasudeva sarvamati, the very verse that you're quoting. And then they see everything is Krishna's energy, everything is Vasudeva, right? So he says, but the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all. But so now he's going to contrast that. So one path is you can go through this extremely strict control of the senses for a prolonged period of time, and then when you've disconnected yourself from everything material, then you come to the stage where you see God everywhere and you surrender, right? Bahunam janmana ante gyanavan mam prapadyante. Krishna says, in the end, they surrender to me. But on the path of bhakti, you surrender to him from the beginning. So he says, but the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all. But he says, in the case of devotional service or bhakti, this very same method is accepted from the very beginning. You surrender to Krishna at the beginning, not once you've entirely purified yourself through strict control. But you do it right from the start.
Imagine if we ran into a jnana yoga master, like when we were 20 years old, and then we just got on this path, and like, what are we doing? And then we found out about bhakti. We're lucky we got into bhakti right away.
We're lucky. We would have never made it.
We would have never made it. It takes like life. First, you got to isolate yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I was looking at a yoga journal once, and I saw like some 200-hour jnana yoga training. And I was thinking to myself, this ain't a jnana yoga training. Right. I mean, to be like and it was like the guy was like jnana yoga master, you know, Jim Thompson or something like that. Okay. I was thinking jnana yoga, to be a jnana yoga, you were not going to advertise in, right? You're not going to advertise in yoga journal to be a jnana yoga master. You're not going to even be in this world, so to speak. You're going to be so detached.
The way the Gita describes it, yeah. It's like you're describes it. And so here it's saying, in the case of devotional service, the very same method is accepted from the very beginning. And by the grace of the Lord, not by your own strict sense control, but by the grace of the Lord, all factual knowledge becomes revealed in the heart of a devotee due to dictation by the Lord from within. Therefore, controlling the senses by devotional service is the only and easiest means. Right? It's fascinating. You know, I spoke yesterday after the show that we did, and we were reading about Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu, who will come up in the 7th chapter. Now, Hiranyakashipu, he was a demon. Like, he was just out to take Lord Vishnu's position and manipulate the material energy for his own enjoyment. He didn't care how cruel he was, etc. But he was like an advanced yogi in the sense that his power of sense control and austerity was like massive, you know, standing on his toes for his incredible long amount of time like this. And he could even maintain his life just in the bones after standing like that for like, you know.
Very impressive feats.
But he didn't have this Vasudeva Sarvamati. He didn't see Krishnas everywhere. Whereas like the little boy Prahlad, he had that yogic vision. He had that Vasudeva Sarvamati, even though he hadn't done all the austerities. Right. And so therefore his father says, where is your God? I don't see him. You're always talking about this God. Is he in this pillar? He doesn't have that Vasudeva Sarvamati. Krishna is everything. But Prahlad's like, yes, of course he's in the pillar. You know. Anyway, we'll get to that story somewhere down the road, right? But so what Prabhupada is saying here is that if we want to achieve this elevated yogic state of mind, we could try to do through austerities and through isolation and through silence and through that kind and contemplation. But if we engage our senses rather than cut them off, it'll be more natural, it'll be more easy, and it'll be more successful. You ready to move on?
Yeah, I was trying to think of something intelligent to say, but then I realized I've got nothing.
Sometimes it's intelligent just not to say anything. 24?
Yes, 24. Oh, dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead, whose attractive and confidential pastimes are described in the confidential, I love that word, confidential parts of the Vedic literature. It's like the CIA or something. The confidential parts of the Vedic literature by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world, and yet remains unaffected. You know, if you're studying these, maybe before you came to Wisdom of the Sages or before you knew anything about bhakti, I can speak for myself. I was interested in India because I realized it was a wealth of metaphysical information. You can find books on metaphysics, about higher planets, about reincarnation, about bhakti, about karma yoga, about raja yoga. And the thing was it was a huge, interesting enigma wrapped in a mystery, right? And it was like, well, what is this? And what are we supposed to take out of this? And they're talking, and if you ever read the Manu Samhita, that's another one, like how to counteract bad karma. The whole thing is confusing. Interesting, but confusing. So Chaitanya, and why we appreciate Chaitanya so much is he and his people, his disciples, Rupa Goswami, we were speaking about this last night, they went through the Vedas and extracted bhakti and just wrote all these bhakti shastras, the sacred literature that has been there for millennia, but now they compiled it, made it very, very simple for people just to add bhakti into their life. And this is what we're getting. We're speaking about these very confidential parts of the Vedas. The Vedas is a very, very, very wide gate. But this confidential part is not just how do I use a mantra to make money? How do I use a mantra to heal myself? How do I use mantras for taking births on higher planets? How do I use mantras as weapons? These are all part of Vedic literature. How do I use a mantra to find my identity separate than what I think I am? This is the power of bhakti yoga. There is a real me underneath this frame, and I've been disconnected from it. I've been just presenting myself as this dude, this yoga teacher, this dad, this New Yorker. It's not me. There is a real me. How do I use a practice? So these bhakti shastras are together to take us out of that false conception. Not here to give us money or higher planets or better whatever. It's here to actually connect with identity. And this is the most confidential part of the Vedic literature. And we're here. This is the Bhagavatam. They said it's the cream of the crop of all Vedic teachings. How do you like that rant?
I like that rant, Raghu.
Ranting today.
This verse there's also kind of like a contrast being presented. On one hand, they're speaking of him with that kind of awe, like it is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world, yet remains unaffected. Like, okay, that's the super Maha God concept, right? But before that, he's saying that he's attractive and he's got these confidential pastimes, right, that are described in the confidential parts of the Vedic literature by his great devotees. And so it's saying, when you read the Bhagavatam, it's 10 cantos. I'm sorry, it's 12 cantos total, but it's building up to the 10th canto. You have 9 cantos before it where you're learning about Lord Vishnu and how he creates and how he maintains and how he annihilates and how he remains unaffected. But it's building you so that you have the right conception, so that when you hear about Krishna, the boy with the confidential pastimes, with the pastimes that deal with intimate love, where the pastimes where that creator and that maintainer and that annihilator reveals his heart and even becomes vulnerable to love. That's the confidential part. That's most people can't or won't understand it. But these women, they're glorifying him in both ways. Sometimes you glorify someone by the contrast, right? He's like this, but still. I was doing this earlier in the show, right? I said like Raghunath Swami, like he's so accomplished and he's got all these and he does all, but his personality is still like this. He's very humble, And so they're saying he creates, he maintains, he annihilates all the world, but he's got these intimate pastimes, these confidential pastimes. That's him, He's got both of those sides.
What are your confidential pastimes?
I'm just hanging out with you, I guess,
Okay.
Want to jump to the next verse?
Yeah,
you want to?
I'm going to feel like jumping in here.
Okay, jump.
25. Whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest modes of existence, the Lord, in his transcendental form, manifests his supreme power, the truth positive, shows special mercy to the faithful, performs wonderful activities, and manifests various transcendental forms as if necessary in different periods and ages. whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals. So some people get offended by this. Wait, what's wrong? I've got a pet. I love my animals. It's not that. In this sense, it means unrestricted with their senses. And the idea is that as a human species, we have a chance to control our senses or indulge our senses. And when we indulge our senses, we feel a little helpless almost. We feel almost like, it's almost like driving down a hill with your car and you're letting go of the wheel. Who's driving who? So the idea is that unrestricted sense control or unrestricted sense gratification, it sort of just like takes us on a ride where we are no longer the master. We've become a slave to our own senses, a slave to our body. It's not just like people practicing bhakti spoke about this. Stoic philosophers spoke about this. Mystics from other traditions, they talk about if you really want freedom, you got to control your senses. And so an idea with an animal is not going to control the senses. Animals are just going to indulge in what they want to indulge in. So you'll hear Prabhupada also say, part of being civilized is not just dressing up in nice clothing, is not just certain types of etiquette. It's controlling your senses, controlling your mind, controlling your thoughts, and then you become civilized. That's what civilization is. It means you're not letting your senses just go on autopilot.
Prabhupada would often kind of define what he means here by like living like an animal. It means that your only interests are in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Right? Like your world is revolving around that. And as a human being, if our world is revolving just around that and is not focused on the spiritual, then we have the potential to do more, but we're just merely living like an animal.
So he would say, polished animal.
Yeah.
Sophisticated animal. Where there's still mating rituals, like, just not like if you see the rooster mating with the hen, which is grotesque. We go through a whole elaborate ritual, right? And defending, we have great military defense budgets, but animals, especially if you live, we have a bunch of animals at Super Soul. It's sort of like you see it, like, oh, I get it.
It all plays out, huh?
It plays out so much, it's almost scary. Like, where we have different birds, geese and ducks and chickens, and there's actually a pecking order. There is like the cool chicken. There is like the chicken that's getting like beat on by everybody. It's truthfully, bird world is like junior high school. Anyway, that is, it's going on in the material world. So the material world means don't be petty like these birds. Be a transcendentalist. Be above all these things. Control the senses, regulate the sense. And you control them by regulating them. You'll hear that word a lot too. Sometimes we can't control them and pull them in. So you regulate it. If you got a problem with drinking alcohol, understandable. We have a culture that completely like endorses you, calling you a cool guy if you drink lots of alcohol. If you have a problem controlling it and you just say, I can't go cold turkey, I can't stop, then you regulate it. You drink. Okay, you want to drink? Drink 3 days a week. You drink on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's when you can drink. All right. Okay.
I don't know if that's the AA program. But,
well, I think it depends where you're at.
Yeah, that's true.
It's completely dismantling your life.
Right.
But I think the idea is that by regulating the senses, the noose that is tied around your neck by being a slave to them starts to slacken. Mm-hmm. Because the days that you're off, you really want to do it, but you're saying, no, just today. It is sort of like the one day at a time. Just today, I'm not going to do it. And then Wednesday's my drinking day, but I don't really need to drink today or have my kids or something. And all of a sudden, that thing that just owned you no longer owns you. You start to create a separation between stimulus and response. Gives us our freedom.
Right.
Right? That's a Yoga Sutras. It's a Yoga Sutras Bhagavad Gita thing, right?
What's
by
that?
Practice constant detachment, by regulating the senses. You hear that again and again. Okay. We'll skip that purport. 26. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura. where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. In the Gita, the personality of Godhead, and this is the purport, Sri Krishna has expressively given a description of his transcendental appearance, disappearance, and the activities. The Lord appears in a particular family or place by his inconceivable potency. He does not take birth as a conditioned soul, quits his body, and accepts another body. His birth is like the appearance and disappearance of the sun. The sun arises on the eastern horizon, but that does not mean that the eastern horizon is the parent of the sun. The sun is existent in every part of the solar system, but he becomes visible at a scheduled time, and so also becomes invisible at another scheduled time. You want to tease out that analogy, Kaustubha? Make it real simple?
Well, that was a pretty simple analogy, but yeah, it's like the sun rises in the east, but we understand that it existed before it rose. So it's not that the east is the giving birth to it. And so similarly, Krishna appears in this world, like he appears as the son of Devaki. But it's not that he didn't exist before that. He existed, he's existed eternally. But, and it's interesting that he also writes that the sun appears at, how did he say it? At a scheduled time and disappears at a scheduled time. Mm. And I believe that he's, in there, he's subtly also saying, because in other places he'll elaborate on this more. But he'll say, like in India in particular, they have all these quote unquote spiritual figures that kind of pose as an incarnation of God, and their followers buy into it, and everybody gets all excited about it.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. But Prabhupada was saying, no. These avatars appear at scheduled times. It's in the shastras. It says when they're going to appear and how they're going to appear, and so it's not that all these people are these avatars. So I think there's also a bit of he's alluding to that idea too there.
Yeah, he appears like he's taking birth. He exists at all times, at every place, but by his causeless mercy, when he appears before us, we take it for granted that he has taken his birth. Anyone who can understand this truth in terms of the statements of these revealed scriptures certainly becomes liberated just after quitting the present body. It's good. Liberation is obtainable after many births and after great endeavor in patience and perseverance, in knowledge and renunciation. But simply by knowing in truth about the Lord's transcendental births and activities, one can get liberation at once. That is the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita.
Verse?
Bahunam Janamamante.
No.
After many births and deaths.
No, but this isn't saying that. Janma karma chame divyam.
Janma karma chame divyam yomam vambedi tatpataha yamam vandin. Okay.
That one who knows the nature of Krishna's transcendental appearance and activities, they do not take their birth again in this material world, but they attain to his nature. Right. So
I was stumped. That is the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita, but those who are in the darkness of ignorance conclude that the Lord's birth and activities in the material world are similar to those of an ordinary living being, right? And we see that if you read the Mahabharata, you see all these great souls thinking, like Bhishma, thinking, here's the Lord, the child of the Yadu dynasty, the young prince. If I could choose the Lord, I would win. We always tell that story about they're going to Krishna. And they're asking Krishna.
Arjuna and Duryodhana.
Arjuna. So the good and evil, Arjuna and Duryodhana, are going to Krishna, and Krishna's laying down on his bed. And they're going to him urgently, Krishna, please, I want you to be on my side. And Duryodhana's thinking, here's this kingdom that we've maintained. Our empire has maintained this small kingdom. And he has some little army. And because we've maintained him so much, we're going to get him on our side to fight for the big war that's about to happen. And so he's saying, Krishna, we've done so much for you. We've really maintained you, taken care of your small kingdom. We think now, you are a good friend. You mean a lot to us. Why don't you fight on our side when this war comes up? And Yudhisthira said, Arjuna, I'm sorry. He says, you mean everything to us. Please be with us on our side. And Krishna says, well, I love you both, so I'm going to give you an option here. And Duryodhana, you came first. So I'm going to give you the first dibs. I have a pretty big army. It's got infantry people and elephants, etc. I have a big army. You can either have my army or you can have me. But if you pick me, I'm not going to fight. So the evil prince thought, if I pick you, you're not going to fight. Or your army. He thought that was easy math.
Heads up.
I pick your army.
Thank you.
Krishna looked very sad at Yudhishthira. Arjuna. I'm so sorry, Arjuna. You got stuck with me, and I'm not going to even fight. But Arjuna was so blissful. He said, Krishna, if I choose you, how could I lose? And this is like the ongoing message repeatedly. It doesn't make material sense to be happy to get Krishna. He's not going to even fight. But of course, Dharma always prevails. Having Krishna on your side, it will naturally be the right choice. If you can't understand Krishna as a being, as a person, then we understand Krishna as truth personified, as righteousness, as doing what's right, following your heart of hearts. But choosing what makes material sense, but makes no spiritual sense. This is a problem in the material world. You get tempted by that material sense. How do we get on that topic, Kaustubha? I was riffing off of a good thing here.
I don't know. I don't know. But we're talking about the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh yeah, we were saying on the battlefield, there's so many people that saw Krishna. They just say it's just some guy. But when you understand who Krishna is, and we read these stories, not as like because I want to learn, I want to be well-rounded about all the cultures of the world. But when you start to learn about Krishna and who he is, then all of a sudden there becomes a reciprocal relationship with Krishna, where you start getting knowledge from within. It starts getting revealed to you. And Krishna starts lifting you right out of the material world. And if you don't believe me, it starts to happen. It's a science. They don't call it a science for anything. They call it a science because you can put yourself into the scientific experiment, and then you can witness it happen to yourself. But you got to enter the experiment. You can't.
That's what you do on Makeover Monday.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do on Makeover Monday. We're going to put ourselves into that experiment and just see how it works. Why don't we say for a week, we're going to be incredibly spiritually conscious just for this week. And then next week, do whatever you want. But this week, we're going to be really focused and see if this stuff works. Just like cut out all types of Maya from your life just for a week. Agree to it. Let's just try it. 1 week, fast from Maya. We're on a strict Maya fast. Our thoughts, careful with your thoughts, your words, your speech, your recreational time, your downtime. Mara, you into this? You've muted yourself, Mara.
Yes.
Okay, Mara's in. Okay, Mara. Well, maybe just Mara should do it. It would just
Tell us how it on Friday. Tell us how it
goes. See if this stuff works.
If it works for you, we'll consider it for next week.
Kaustubha, you're already doing it, so you don't have to do it.
I'm not. I need help. Bhagavatam helps me get through.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, Bhagavatam is really helping me. I'm really grateful. Thanks, everybody here on Zoom. If you want to join our Zoom group, you can email Mara. wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Have a great Makeover Monday. If you're listening to on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, go to Apple Podcasts right now on your phone and give us a 5-star review. It helps our people view us in the world of podcasts. And remember, we are a listener-supported podcast. So if you'd like to support what we're doing and appreciate us through your tithing and love or generosity, you can. Patreon.com/wisdomofthesages. Patreon.com/wisdomofthesages. Thank you for all the people supporting us. We love doing this. It's our passion to do it. And we'd love to just keep this transcendental party going. What was our numbers today, Kaustubha?
I didn't notice. It was around 120 something or something.
It's 100 people listen to Bhagavatam, 5 a.m. Now, it's time to transcend our mind and body through spiritual lip syncing with Raghunath. Thanks for everybody on Zoom who joined us late that I didn't say good morning to. David G. Kassia, Noah Weissman, and Scylla. Lauren Carr, Vrindavan, good morning. Martine, bonjour. Patricia Lutfi, Uragaya, Damodar Priya, Amalini,